All right, tonight we're opening up the case files on some of the most chilling digital mysteries I've ever come across. And these aren't just abstract stories from some server farm far away. No, these are threats found in one of the most personal places we have, our voicemail. I mean, just think about it for a second. Your phone, it's practically your entire life in your pocket. But what happens when that connection, that lifeline, gets compromised? What happens when something truly menacing finds a way through? Well, that's what we're looking into. We're opening the files on calls that should have never been made.
So let's get right into our first case. The file opens in August of 2021. We have a man we're just going to call John, living out in West Texas. He gets a call from a no-caller ID number. Now, like most of us, he just let it go to voicemail. But what he heard next? Well, it was the start of an absolutely terrifying ordeal.
That message, it's short, it's direct, and it is deeply, deeply unsettling. You know, John's first thought had to be that this was some kind of prank, right? But that one line, "I found your info online," that really stuck with him. So he did exactly what you or I would do. He started Googling himself. And what he found is pretty shocking. It turns out a seemingly smart business decision had actually created this critical security flaw. See, John had registered an S corporation using his own name. It's a really common thing to do for tax purposes. But that one simple act made his entire business filing, and I'm talking his full name, his personal phone number, and his home address, a public record, completely searchable by anyone on the internet.
And this is where the situation escalates, and fast. The caller wasn't just on the phone anymore. He was physically there. First, there was banging on the front door. John ignored it. Then the phone rings again, no caller ID. He ignores that too. And just moments later, the knocking starts at the back door. This was no mistake. This was a targeted, persistent attempt to get inside his house.
So the intruder calls one last time. John picks up, and he states very clearly that he is armed and that the police are on their way. And instantly, the man's entire demeanor just flips. He starts claiming he was just looking for work, he apologizes, and he hangs up. The knocking stopped. But let's be clear, investigators knew right away. Banging on someone's front and back doors late at night is not how you apply for a job.
Now, while John's case was a very tangible, very physical threat, our next set of files deals with something else entirely. These are cases where the threat isn't so easy to pin down, and the voicemails seem to be a gateway to something that, frankly, defies any logical explanation.
What's so wild is that across multiple, completely unrelated cases, this really disturbing pattern starts to emerge. It always begins with a bizarre, untraceable voicemail, maybe a muffled cry for help, or tortured screaming, or even, in one case, the voice of a relative who had been dead for 2 years. And then, this is followed by strange physical events in the real world. Doors slamming shut on their own, phantom footsteps, cabinets closing at night. It's as if the digital world and the physical world are somehow inexplicably bleeding into one another.
So these aren't just treated as simple prank calls or, a technical glitch in the system. No, investigators classify these kinds of events under a specific term, high strangeness. And that's for phenomena so bizarre, they actually force us to question the very nature of what's possible. And that brings us to our most urgent and probably most chilling file. This is a voicemail that doesn't just suggest a threat, it appears to be a direct cry for help from a potential victim of a violent crime. So get this, a woman is just setting up her new phone, and she discovers a whole batch of old voicemails she'd never even heard before. And buried in there is this message from a terrified, frantic voice pleading for help and claiming, "They have my baby." The investigation had one single immediate clue to go on, the area code from that unknown number. And that 480 area code traces directly back to the Phoenix, Arizona area. So all of a sudden, this phantom call has a real-world geographic location, a potential crime scene. The woman who found the message, she spent her entire day just combing through news reports from that area, desperately trying to connect this terrified voice to a real person. But here's the tragic twist in this case. The voicemail was actually left on June 9th, 2017. It wasn't discovered until almost a full year later in the middle of 2018. Any trail that might have existed was already ice cold. And today, the full 3-minute audio clip, which people who heard it described as absolutely horrific, has completely vanished from the internet. The evidence itself has become a ghost.
So, what was the resolution? What happened in these cases? Well, in all of them, the most unsettling answer is that there isn't one. The digital trails went cold, leaving nothing behind but questions.
For John in Texas, changing his business name did stop the harassment.
but the identity of the man at his door is still a total mystery. The eerie voicemails and the strange physical events from our second case, they remain completely unexplained. And that desperate voice from Phoenix? Well, she is still just a voice. Her fate and her child's fate, completely unknown. None of these digital mysteries have ever been solved.
You know, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Our phones connect us to the world, but they also record these echoes, these fragments of moments that sometimes carry way more questions than answers. What other stories are just lost out there in the digital noise, just waiting for someone to listen? The digital world is absolutely full of these unsolved cases where modern technology and the great unknown collide. So to join us as we open up the next case file, make sure you subscribe. The investigation is far